These cars looked slow, big, heavy, covered in chrome. Everything suggested they were built for cruising, not for speed. But that wasn't true, because while everyone was focused on the design, manufacturers were quietly adding more and more power under the hood, more carburetors, higher compression, and the result was this. Cars that, without looking like it, were surprisingly fast. And I'll tell you something, several of these cars are not the ones you're expecting. Let's begin. 1958, Chevrolet Impala. If there was one car no one expected to be truly fast, it was this. Because the 1958 Impala wasn't born as a sports car. It was born as a big, elegant, chrome-filled machine. The kind of car most people would assume is heavy, slow, built just for cruising. But beneath that image, there was something completely different. This was the first year the Impala became its own standalone model, and Chevrolet made a key decision. Give it real power. Under the hood, the 348 cubic inch V8 in tri-power configuration with 3 carburetors produced up to 280 horsepower, a serious number for 1958. And it wasn't just power on paper. This engine delivered strong, immediate performance, with plenty of torque from low RPM, making the car feel much faster than its size suggested. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 8 seconds. That might not sound impressive today, but in 1958, it placed it among the fastest cars you could buy. And that's where it gets interesting, because nothing about this car screamed speed, chrome everywhere, flashy design, a presence built to impress visually. But the moment you stepped on the gas, everything changed. It wasn't a muscle car. That concept didn't exist yet, but clearly, it was already pointing in that direction. And that's what makes it perfect to open this video, because it represents exactly the core idea: speed, where no one expected it. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Impala with a 348 engine can range between $40,000 and $90,000, depending on condition and configuration. But beyond its value, this car marks the beginning of something much bigger. The exact moment when Americans started to realize that even the biggest cars could also be fast. 1958, Pontiac Bonneville. If the Impala surprised people with its power, this one raised the bar, because the Bonneville wasn't just fast for its size. In many cases, it was faster than most people expected from an American car at the time. And that wasn't by accident. By the late 1950s, Pontiac was beginning to build a very clear identity. Big cars, with attitude. And the Bonneville was the perfect example of that. At first glance, it looks exactly like what you'd expect from the era. Long body, plenty of chrome, an elegant, even imposing presence. But beneath all that was one of the most interesting engines of the year. The 370 cubic inch V8 with tri-power, 3 carburetors, produced up to 300 horsepower. And in 1958, that was serious. More than enough to move that car with surprising authority. But what really mattered wasn't just the power, it was how it delivered it. When all 3 carburetors came alive, the car completely changed character. It went from a smooth cruiser to something far more aggressive, far more alive. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7.5 to 8 seconds. A number that placed it right alongside, and sometimes ahead of, many other cars of its time. And that's exactly why this car fits perfectly in this video. Because once again, it didn't look fast, it wasn't low, it wasn't light, it didn't look sporty. But in reality, it could surprise anyone in a straight line run. And that made it a true sleeper, before that term even existed. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Bonneville can range between $50,000 and $100,000, especially in well-optioned versions. But beyond its value, this car represents something very important. The moment Pontiac started taking performance seriously. And when that happened, the result was exactly this: a big, elegant car that was much faster than it had any right to be. 1958 Ford Thunderbird. If the previous 2 were already fast, this one plays in a completely different space. The Thunderbird wasn't designed to be a muscle car or a sleeper. It was designed to be something more refined, more exclusive, more personal. In fact, this was the first year of the second generation, the famous Square Bird, where Ford completely redefined what the Thunderbird was. It stopped being a two-seat sports car and became something bigger, more comfortable, more luxury-oriented. And that might make you think it also became slower, but that wasn't the case. Under the hood, the 352 cubic inch V8 delivered up to 300 horsepower, a number that placed it right alongside cars much more focused on performance. And what's most interesting is how effortlessly it did it. Smooth acceleration, steady pull, but with strength that was always there. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 8 seconds. Once again, a very solid figure for 1958, especially for a car with this kind of focus. But what really makes it stand out in this list is the contradiction. Because this car doesn't communicate speed, it communicates elegance, comfortable interior, refined driving experience, a car built to enjoy the journey, not to chase speed. And yet, when you pushed it, it responded. And that's what makes it one of the most interesting cars of this pre-muscle car era. Because it proves something important. Speed didn't always come in an aggressive form. Sometimes, it came disguised as luxury. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Out of these three, Impala, Bonneville, and Thunderbird, which one surprises you the most in terms of performance? Because the next car takes everything to a much more serious level. 1958, Chrysler 300D. If, until now, we've been talking about cars that were fast for their size, this is where the story completely changes. Because this car wasn't just fast, it was, quite simply, one of the fastest cars in the world at the time. And that's not an exaggeration. Chrysler's letter series already had a reputation since the mid-1950s. But with the 300D, that reputation became undeniable. This wasn't just a luxury car. It was built with one very clear goal: real performance. Under the hood, a 392 cubic inch Hemi, V8 delivered up to 380 horsepower. An absolutely brutal number for 1958. But what's even more impressive is what it did with that power. This car could exceed 135 miles per hour, something that, at the time, placed it in a completely different league compared to most American cars. And yes, we're talking about a big, heavy, luxury-filled car, and still capable of competing with some of the fastest sports cars of its era. Strong acceleration, serious response, and a constant surge of power that never faded. There was no doubt. This car wasn't playing around. And this is where everything in the video starts to come together. Because while other cars hid their speed, this one didn't. This one wore it as part of its identity, and yet, visually, it still looked elegant. Clean lines, balanced proportions, a design that didn't need exaggeration to command respect. And that makes it even more interesting, because it combines two worlds that rarely worked this well together at the time: luxury and absolute dominance in a straight line. Today, a well-preserved Chrysler 300D can easily exceed $120,000 to $200,000, with exceptional examples going even higher. Because this car isn't just fast, it's historic. It's proof that even before the muscle car era, American machines were already pushing speed to another level. And when you compare it to everything we've seen so far, it becomes clear. This is no longer just fast for its time. This is something else entirely. 1958 Dodge Coronet D500. If the Chrysler 300D represented the refined side of speed, this represents something much more direct, more raw, more unexpected. Because it didn't have the image of a high-performance car. It wasn't exclusive, it wasn't overly luxurious, and it definitely didn't stand out the way other cars of the era did. But that's exactly the point. Because beneath that relatively understated appearance, there was a package built specifically for performance. The D500 designation wasn't just a name, it was a high-performance version. And under the hood, a 361 cubic inch V8 in D500 configuration produced around 310 horsepower. And in a car that didn't look special, that changed everything, because this car didn't try to impress visually, it impressed in motion. strong acceleration, more aggressive response than most, and a much livelier feel than its design suggested. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7.5 seconds. A figure that placed it very close to the fastest cars of its time. And this is where it becomes interesting. Because this car perfectly fits the core idea of the video, speed where no one expected it. It didn't have the fame of the Chrysler, it didn't have the recognition of the Thunderbird, nor the visual impact of the Impala. But in a straight line, it could surprise more than a few, and that makes it one of the purest sleepers on this list. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Coronet D500 can range between $40,000 and $80,000, although rare or exceptional condition examples can exceed that. A 1958 Plymouth Fury. If there's one car that combines image, identity, and performance in 1958, it's this one. It wasn't just fast, it was impossible to ignore. From the very first glance, this car already felt different. The signature white paint, the gold accents, that very specific aesthetic that set it apart from everything else. This wasn't just another car, it was a statement. But what makes it interesting is that it didn't rely on looks alone. Beneath all that style, there was an engine that truly delivered. The 350 cubic inch Golden Commando V8 produced up to 305 horsepower, a very solid figure for the time. And more than enough to give this car a much more aggressive personality than it seemed to have. Because, once again, this didn't look like a car built for speed, but when you stepped on it, you felt it. Quick response, strong power delivery, and a much more dynamic behavior than its size suggested. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 8 seconds, placing it right back among the fastest cars you could find in 1958. But what truly makes the Fury special in this list is the overall package. Because here, you have something not every car achieves. A strong visual identity, combined with real performance. It wasn't just beautiful, it wasn't just different, it was also fast. And that makes it one of the most complete cars of this pre-muscle car era. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Plymouth Fury can range between $50,000 and $100,000, especially in more original configurations. Because this car represents something very clear, the moment when bold design and performance started to go hand in hand. 1958 Oldsmobile Super 88. If up until now we've seen fast cars, this is where things start to get more serious, because Oldsmobile in the 1950s already had a very clear reputation, building engines that truly performed. And the J2 rocket system was the ultimate proof of that. Under the hood, the 371 cubic inch V8 with triple carburetor setup produced around 312 horsepower. But here's what really matters. It wasn't just the number, it was how that power came in. Because when all three carburetors kicked in, the car completely transformed. It went from smooth cruising to something much more aggressive, more direct, far more alive. And in 1958, that wasn't common. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7 seconds, clearly placing it among the fastest cars of its time. And it did all of that without looking like it. Because visually, this was still a classic Oldsmobile, big, elegant, full of presence, but without that sense of danger that other performance cars carried. And that's where the magic is, because this car didn't advertise its speed, it hid it. And when you needed it, it delivered without hesitation. That makes it one of the purest examples of what this video represents. Real performance, hidden beneath a completely misleading appearance. Today, a well-preserved Super 88 with the J2 package can exceed $60,000 to $110,000, especially in original configurations. This car isn't just fast, it's technical. It's one of the early examples where engineering started to play a more serious role in American performance. And now I want to hear your opinion. Out of all the cars we've seen so far, which one has surprised you the most in terms of real speed? Because the next one takes that same idea, but from a completely different perspective. 1958, Buick Century. If there was one brand that truly understood how to mix luxury with speed, it was Buick. In fact, within its own lineup, the Century had a very clear reputation. It was the fast Buick, and that wasn't by accident. The formula was simple, but extremely effective. Take a relatively lighter body and combine it with the most powerful engine available. And the result was this. Under the hood, the 364 cubic inch V8 delivered up to 300 horsepower, a number that placed it right alongside many of the most powerful cars of the time. But what made it interesting wasn't just the power, it was the balance. Because unlike other cars on this list, the Century felt more agile, more responsive, easier to handle at higher speeds. Strong acceleration, progressive response, and an overall sense of lightness that wasn't common in cars of this size. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7.5 seconds. Once again, a very respectable figure for 1958. And the best part is that it didn't look like an extreme car. It was still a Buick. Elegant, refined, comfortable, with that sense of class that defined the brand. But beneath that appearance, there was intent. There was performance. And that's what makes it one of the most interesting cars on this list. Because it represents a very clear idea. You don't need to look aggressive to be fast. Sometimes, being balanced is enough. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Buick Century can range between $40,000 and $80,000, depending on condition. But beyond its value, this car is part of a formula that worked so well. It would be repeated for years. Less weight, more engine, and the result always speaks for itself. 1958. Cadillac Series 62, when it comes to luxury in 1958. Cadillac was at the top. But what many people didn't expect is that it could also be fast. Because the Series 62 wasn't built with performance in mind. It was built for comfort, for presence, to be the ultimate symbol of status on the road. Massive body, chrome details everywhere, a spacious, refined interior. Everything about this car said one thing: luxury. But beneath all that sophistication, there was an engine far more serious than it seemed. The 365 cubic inch V8 delivered up to 310 horsepower, a number that, in a car of this size, should not be ignored, and you could feel it once the car was in motion. Smooth, progressive acceleration, but with a constant force that pushed effortlessly forward. It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't violent, but it was faster than it looked. 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 9 seconds. Maybe not the fastest on this list, but definitely far more capable than its image suggested. And that's exactly why it fits perfectly in this video. Because once again, we have hidden speed. No one looked at a Cadillac in 1958 thinking about acceleration. But reality was different. And that's what makes it interesting. Because it proves something important. Even the most luxurious cars of that era were already starting to incorporate levels of power that weren't common just a few years earlier. Today, a well-preserved 1958 Cadillac Series 62 can range between $50,000 and $100,000, with exceptional examples going even higher. And in the end, everything becomes clear. In 1958, speed wasn't what it seemed. It didn't come in low-slung cars, it didn't come in aggressive designs, and it didn't come only from machines built purely for performance. It was hidden beneath tons of steel, beneath shining chrome, beneath cars that, at first glance, seem built just for cruising. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Out of all the cars we saw today, which one do you think is the most impressive in terms of real performance? The Impala, the Bonneville, the Chrysler 300D? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, I recommend the next video you're seeing on screen right now, because that's where we fully enter the era where all of this truly exploded, the fastest American cars of the 1960s, a decade where speed stopped hiding and became the main character. Click on the video, and I'll see you there.